Welcome to the 10th episode of the Sport Analytics podcast. Today, we're joined by Alexander Rogers, who is a football analyst for the Tennessee Titans. Alex, how are you doing?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Doing great, doing great. So wanted to, describe a little bit of the journey that you've gone to. Your career includes experience as a senior data analyst at Hy-Vee, a basketball strategy and research intern with the Phoenix Suns, and notably your own background playing collegiate football at Drake University. Now you're leveraging that blend of on-field knowledge and analytical expertise to drive decisions at the NFL level. Let's dive into your journey and the lessons that you learned along the way. I would like to start off by asking how you got into the intersection of football and analytics. Was there like any particular moment or project during your collegiate football days at Drake that sparked your passion for data-driven decision making?
Yeah, I think it actually started with the basketball side of things a little bit more. Honestly, I think watching an NBA game and they'd be like, "Oh, Steph is the first person to make, 30 threes in the month of February," some like random stat. I really always appreciated those random stats, and that's kind of what got me into like the sports analytics world, is just always having an interest in like just random stats that sometimes people don't care about, sometimes people do care about. I think that's like what sparked the initial interest. And then as I learned more and more, I started to dive into more of the decision making process and how that all looks.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, and kind of relating to your experience, you balanced an analytics role at Hy-Vee alongside being a student athlete. How did juggling football responsibilities and data projects help shape your approach to working efficiently and communicating insights effectively?
Yeah, I think just like a mix of football and working at Hy-Vee at the same time just made me very disciplined in my approach. I mean, football in college is nearly a full-time job as well. And then working pretty much a full-time job with Hy-Vee, I just had to be very disciplined in where I spent my time and how I allocated my time. So there was a lot of early mornings where I'd work before practice and then I'd work after practice, etc. I think from like an analytical approach, I think one thing that really helped me playing football and then basically doing analytics at the same time was just how to communicate effectively. A lot of one-liners, a lot of, hey, this is, I might not be able to make, a meeting because I have a work meeting, or I might not be able to make a work meeting because I have football. So being very open and honest with my communication with both parties at the same time allowed me to always keep, leadership on both spectrums in the know of, well, about what's going on with me.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see, the balance that you were able to, use while you were in college. Also want to talk about some of your experience in the NBA. You already mentioned how you were, very into like basketball stats as a child, and you also spent time as a basketball strategy and research intern with the Phoenix Suns. How did that role materialize, and what kind of analysis did you do for an NBA franchise versus what you do now or what you see now in the NFL?
Yeah. So that role really materialized in like just a natural process. I know a lot of times people have connections or insights into potential roles. That was just a plain job posting on LinkedIn or maybe even Teamworks Online that I just applied to. And I went through a pretty natural process where it was an interview, a project, one more interview, and then I was fortunate enough to get offered the role. So there was no like additional pieces to that, just except for that I saw it and applied for it. As far as the project work goes, being an intern there, the basis of the internship was in the summer. So really we just got one big project to work on that really allowed us to take a deep dive into the data and just basically understand what all data the NBA has to offer. They're getting more and more advanced with their tracking data, and I know a lot of teams are attempting to leverage that now. So my personal project there was actually not with the tracking data. It was more about predicting how guys would translate from college to the NBA based on different factors such as their position, where they played at school, their height, weight, etc. And just basically creating like a model to predict how guys might translate if given the opportunity to play in the NBA. That differentiates a little bit from what I do now, just because right now a lot of my analysis is seasonality based, so in season versus out of season. In season, it's a lot more coach focused. It's really week to week type analysis. Where out of season, this is my first off season with the Titans, so I'm starting to experience a little bit bigger projects, more longevity projects that we can kind of deep dive into and do a little bit more research about.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. It's great that you've had both of those experiences working in both professional environments and different sports. Could you kind of like walk us through your move from Hy-Vee and the NBA environment into an NFL role? I know you kind of went through that, but like what drew you specifically to pro football analytics and how did you prepare for that transition?
I think playing college football was like one of the bigger helps to like the transition. But I think overall, it was really about the fit. When I interviewed with the team, there was a lot of things that we talked about that really drew me to pursuing this like NFL opportunity. It was really kind of a startup mindset as the Titans haven't had analytics for a long time. This should probably be the third season, basically, with an analytical team at all. So, kind of having that startup mindset, knowing that I was going to have to do a little bit of everything, from like data engineer work to the analysis to model building, everything really drew me to want to pursue this opportunity. So that was probably like the biggest piece of it.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's it's really interesting to see how your journey has like progressed through time. As a football analyst, what does your day or week typically involve in terms of like data collection, building models, collaborating with coaches, or prepping scouting reports? And how do you fit in with the broader football operations?
Yeah, so I'll start with the second question first. As far as how we fit in with the broader football operations, I think the analytics team does a good job at touching pretty much every piece of football operations. So everything from the performance staff to the coaching to scouting, we have our hands kind of involved in everything, which has been really nice, and it's really beneficial to just learn from each of the other departments and understand what they're looking for in players, how they evaluate players, etc. As far as my day to day, currently, since we are in our first off season with draft season coming upon us, we've been able to work on some slightly larger projects while still answering questions for front office personnel such as the scouts, GMs, etc. So it's like our real day to day right now is everybody's kind of working on these bigger projects, but when the time comes when a coach or someone does have a question, then it's more of an ad hoc thing. So that's kind of what the day to day is looking like right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. And football, it can be very traditional in its scouting and coaching culture. How do you ensure that like advanced analytics, like your models or projections, are received and utilized effectively by staff who may rely more on experience and gut feel?
Yeah. Contrary to analytics, I think in some instances, a coach is hired to be a coach for a reason. So that gut feeling still does need to come into play from time to time, because numbers can be a great way to tell a story, but sometimes if done wrong or done not for a specific setting, they can be interpreted inaccurately. So I think that a lot of times I do still respect when coaches use that gut instinct to make their decisions, because that is ultimately what they were hired to do. But I think as far as interpreting or providing such like analytical information to like higher ups, I think the best way is through visualizations and coloring. Honestly, a lot of teams or a lot of places all have their own color scales based on what good and bad means. For instance, it could be a red, yellow, green, or it could be a purple, blue, yellow, etc. I think just continuing to always use those color schemes when you're talking about something that's good and that's bad spreads to all of the different departments the same way. Everybody at the Titans, like we all know, say we see a gold, we all know that means good in whatever facet that we're talking about. It could be from a performance standpoint, it could be from an on-field standpoint, it could be from a recruiting standpoint. When we see the color gold, that means the same thing to all of us. So I think that's the best way to kind of give out these results to coaches and other personnel, honestly, is just always providing some visual with some color so they can get that high level KPI if that's all they want. And then if they want to take a deep dive, you can provide that additional analysis.
Yeah, I think the interpretation aspect of sport analytics is really important. So I definitely agree there. Kind of you kind of touched upon this before, but just want to follow up by asking, like, how does your focus shift during the regular season when you're preparing for weekly opponents compared to the off season when roster building and draft preparation takes center stage?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like what I mentioned before. In during the season, it's a lot coach focused. We're really there for the coaches and what they need week to week to, get us a win on the field, because obviously if you're not winning on the field, a lot of things aren't going well in the org. Like, everything's for those Sundays. So during the season, I would say a good amount of our work is dedicated towards the coaching staff and what they need week to week. And then off season is, when we really get to start becoming a little bit more, we basically get to do a lot more research and try to figure out, different projects we kind of want to work on, things that we're interested in working on, and just new things coming down the ladder, with artificial intelligence and other things becoming bigger and bigger. It's like you want to stay on top of these new technologies as they're introduced to the NFL and other leagues around the world. So I think that's the biggest way the in-season versus off-season program kind of differentiates.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Kind of want to talk about just the general field of NFL analytics. It continues to evolve and improve. With the proliferation of player tracking data. Could you elaborate on which technologies or data sources you have found most impactful for tight ends, and maybe how you've used them in your models in the past on very surface level?
Yeah. Keeping it relatively surface level, I definitely think the player tracking data has been what I've utilized the most. Especially now in a college standpoint, there's becoming more and more availability to college player tracking data. And I think that's been a game changer because NGS has been around for a while. So we've been able to track NFL guys for a while, but the ability to track college players at whatever level they're playing at is a bit new, at least to me. So that's been one of the areas that I found most beneficial, especially in evaluating some of these college prospects, is just understanding their in-game play, maybe some of their max speeds, their max excels from how they play compared to, a combine event that everybody practices for months. Like, hey, we all run the same 40. We're going to practice this for 3 months, but how do you actually play in a game? Are you fast? Are you quick, etc.? So that in-game tracking data for college has been one of the best technologies I found useful thus far.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see all the new data that's coming in and how it's able to impact the field as a whole, not even just in football, but all different sports. You've also touched upon your experience playing football at Drake and how that's kind of helped you enter the industry of football analytics. Just want to follow up on that aspect. Does that firsthand playing background help you translate that data into more practical insights for coaches and players? And how important is having that on-field lens in your current role?
Yeah, I think it's definitely beneficial. I don't think it's the end of the world if you don't have that experience. Naturally, I guess the biggest benefit is being able to speak the same language as a lot of coaches, or being able to identify where data mishaps may happen. So, for instance, coverage may be labeled one thing on screen, and then you watch it and you're like, okay, well, I know from my playing days that this may not be a cover three. This might be, more of a man zone type of feel or what have you. So I think that's where the biggest benefit comes from, is just that natural language that I'm able to speak back and forth with a lot of the defensive staff, especially. As far as having that and whether that's a key factor to obtaining a job like this, I don't think that's necessary at all. Playing football, honestly, I mean, obviously it helps and it can increase your analysis, but I think just learning the data and watching and things of that nature can put you in the same footsteps as maybe somebody who played.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think Yeah, it's great to see the industry so open to anyone who's just interested in watching sports in general and has a love for data. Data in the NFL can sometimes be inconsistent due to like injuries, game conditions, sample size issues, etc. What are the toughest challenges you have faced in the past with like data quality or availability, and how do you address those?
Yeah, um, some of the tougher challenges I think would still be around that data tracking for new college athletes or the new tracking data for college. I think as far as how we go about like figuring it out or how we go about adjusting this data is more along the spectrum of just ensuring that we understand what it's truly telling us. So say there's minimal data for a player, we kind of need to just understand like that we do have a sample size limitation, and that when we potentially give out this analysis, we just asterisk it with that the idea that there is a sample size limitation. I think that as far as like data inaccuracies go, I haven't run into too many data inaccuracies yet in my career. I'm still pretty new, so still understanding like where that may occur. But I think as far as even data inaccuracy, doing things such as like t-tests when you have more accurate data in the NFL compared to like college is a good way to just understand where things may or may not be accurate at.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thanks, for like talking about that because I think maybe looking at that's a field of data science which hasn't been addressed a lot. How to deal with issues, and it's great to hear from a professional how that works. You kind of already talked about how in college football there's a lot more tracking data coming in, which definitely helps with like scouting and draft preparation. Looking forward, what new developments like wearable technology, AI-driven scouting tools, or advanced machine learning do you see shaping the next era of NFL analytics? Something that may have not already come out in any regard yet.
Yeah, I honestly, with all of the health and safety stuff going on, I think that is where we will see the first big push for with some of these AI technologies. Like for instance, one thing I can easily see that could be new and really help out is some type of sensors in the helmets. Concussions have been such a big deal for a long time. I could see, some AI technology being implemented in everyone's helmets where, hey, you take a big blow, it immediately sends a message to someone in the press box saying, like, let's at least check on this player, just due to the pressure that they just received from a tackle or from a hit. So that's one of the first places I can envision AI and like wearable tech and, even more force plate technology being implemented in the league. Is just continued advancement for health and safety for the players.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I've seen a lot of progress being done in that field, especially with the new kickoff rules and everything. I think it's interesting to see how that can change in terms of a data mindset. You've progressed quickly across these different sports organizations. The Suns, Hy-Vee, and now the Titans. How do you keep growing your skill set, and are there personal goals you're aiming for in the near future?
I think I honestly think it's the people. I would give all the people I've worked with like the credit. Especially here at the Titans, I think the small team we have is very strong and very advanced. And I think keeping up with them, learning from them, just seeing how they do things day to day is honestly what's made my skill set a lot better. And I've kind of felt that way every step of the way. When I was at Hy-Vee, I started as an intern, so learning from some of the senior analytics members then, gathering those skills. And then when I went to the Suns, that was like a new skill set for me, watching how other coworkers did things there, picking up skills from there. And now the same thing with the Titans. I feel like we have a really strong team, and I've been able to learn so much from them in this past like year, where I may have not thought about things a certain way, or I may have been used to doing things like in a different, more traditional way, and now we're all kind of competing against each other in a way, making each other better. So I think that's the best way I've been able to continue to develop skills, is just challenge from the top down, like from my boss, from my coworkers, and how we kind of all hold each other accountable.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Kind of wanted to backtrack a little bit back to your role. I wanted to ask about, collaboration with other departments. Obviously you work in the football analytics side of the Tennessee Titans, doing a lot of on-field work. Do you work closely with other departments like player personnel, medical staff, or even marketing? And how integrated is your role across the entire organization?
Yeah, so I think we work really closely with everybody on the football side. So marketing and sales and stuff, they have their own analytics team, so we don't get to touch those like avenues. But as far as like performance staff, the strength coaches, the wellness, uh, like the physical therapists, basically the scouting and just other front office personnel. I think we have a good hand in all of those areas, just not as much of the business side. So, how does our role help? I mean, with analytics having such a big push in more recent years, all of those people have data questions that they need answered and that they're interested in. So they all do a good job at coming, to our department, maybe spitballing an idea and seeing what we can come up with, and then we go back to them with this new analysis. So that's really how our hand would be in each of those other departments.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I kind of wanted to ask a few concluding questions about any advice you have. Obviously you've gone through many different roles, working with the Suns, Hy-Vee, and now the Titans. Are there any skills, either technical or practical skills that you think are really important for someone who's trying to break into any sort of like sports analytics industry?
Yeah, I think just knowing your basic SQL, Python, R. I think a lot more teams are being open to whether you are R or Python focused. I don't know if there's like a preference there as much as there used to be. But I think knowing SQL is one that sometimes people pass by without gathering that proper like base structure on how to really pull data efficiently. So I think that's a skill that continues, that always needs to be had when you want to enter some of these. And then just as far as other advice, I think, creating a portfolio is something that's free. There's free data out there for you to pull and try new projects on. And then just thinking of new creative ways on how you could help any league team. Honestly, creating a portfolio and just posting your information on LinkedIn, I think is super impactful and a nice way to basically create this portfolio for free. So when you do interview, you have things to show that can really help you land a job.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And anything on like the practical side, I know like communication is really important. If you can like elaborate on like how important do you think are some of the practical skills are for a job like this, even though it's ideally a technical role in that regard?
Yeah, I think your analysis is only as good as like its use case, basically how it's used. So you can come up with the best analysis in the world, but if you aren't able to articulate your findings correctly, it now is just an average analysis essentially. So I think the ability to like communicate effectively and precisely with your end users is makes all the difference. I think there needs to be a confidence when you say what you found, and you kind of need to own the mistakes that might happen or whatnot. So I think the communication part is probably the most overlooked aspect of some of these technical roles, because a lot of times you might provide a coach or someone with these numbers and they might honestly just ask, what does this mean? And you need to be able to kind of give that quick insight and background information on what these numbers mean so that they can trust your process, and going forward just basically just trust you as an individual going forward. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think it's great to have both the technical and practical abilities that are important for a job like this. Just like one final like advice question, like and kind of relate to our mission here. Here at Sport Analytics, we're trying to make certifications for students in different fields based on what sports they're interested in, what languages they want to work on. You already released an introduction of football analytics in our class, but we'd like to hear your advice on what topics do you think we should be teaching. Any like technical skills or even like any practical skills that we might want to teach here at Sport Analytics that you think would be really important and appeal to people at recruiting departments in NFL and other football environments.
yeah, I think the visualization aspect is one thing that should continuously be harped on. I think Nice visuals, nice clean cut visuals is something that makes like it pops really fast. And high level KPIs are a lot of times all upper level management has time for. You might spend a week on a long report, but being able to kind of deliver your findings in 2 to 3 sentences might be all some of your GMs and presidents might want, honestly. So being able to make really clean cut and precise analytical like takeaways is something I think is very beneficial. Um, Additional like outside of football, just professional advice would also be very beneficial. How to reach out to someone on LinkedIn, etc. Honestly, being in this industry for only a year, I've gotten a lot of requests, and a lot of people just reach out and say, "Hey, I'd love to hear about your job more." Well, I mean, that's what 300 people have asked. Like, "Hey, I want to hear about your job more." I think reaching out to a professional, you should have a really clear cut question that you want them to answer to maybe open the door to a bigger conversation. Hey, what do you think about this? Or, hi, I worked on the big data bowl, like, and am looking for X, Y, and Z. Those type of questions, I feel like industry professionals are more likely to reply to instead of just, hey, like, I just want to hear about your job. So those are two big skills I think would get people a lot further.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks a lot, Alex. Your insights and advice have been really valuable, and it's great to finally have had an NFL person on this podcast. That was something we were really looking for, so we really appreciate your time here. To all our viewers, check out our previous episodes if you haven't. We're going to have a lot of great episodes with industry professionals across many major sports. Once again, thanks a lot, Alex, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.